this video, I'm going to be talking about how to embed quotes. This particular lecture will accompany the notes handout that you have on embedding quotes, so feel free to have that out and follow along. First of all, I want to talk about the word embed and make sure you understand what that means. It means to incorporate, to include as a part of. So whenever I talk about being sure that you embed quotes, that means you need to be sure to include them within your sentences and within your writing and not just have them floating out in the middle of your paper. So first of all, I want to talk about the three letters TSQ, which I want you to memorize and remember when you're incorporating quotes into your writing. First of all, the T stands for transition, a transitional word or phrase. You can use the list that I provided in your handbook, which is also posted on your website. It looks like this. It has some useful transitions listed by category that can help you out. This isn't a complete list, but it's a good starting place. If you don't have this list handy, then of course you can just search online and find another list. There's plenty out there. If you have a grammar book or a writing textbook of some sort handy, of course you can check the index or the table of contents and they'll have lots of sample transitions in there as well. The S stands for situation, and this is very important. You want to be sure to give the situation or context surrounding the quote, what is going on in the story, what's being discussed in the article, etc. So this will help give your reader some idea of what it is you're talking about or what part of the story you're talking about. Stands for quote, and you want to be sure to use the smallest part of the quote as possible. That's necessary to prove your point. You don't want to make whoever's reading your paper reread the story or reread the article, so really hone in on what's most important. Let's take a look at some examples. The first one here, to illustrate, that's a transitional phrase. When Charles bent down to kiss his mother, that's the situation in the story, something new and almost ugly had come into his eyes, perhaps even hatred. That's the quote itself that we want to use. This one in particular comes from Madame Bovary. Now let's look at another example. Consequently, Maud Martha felt like a life-giving force when she freed the mouse. She was conscious of a new cleanness within her. So again, in parentheses, you can see each part labeled, a transition word followed by a situation, followed by a quote. And a third example right here, you see. For example, when Mr. Abe learns the narrator has discovered the private joy of collecting abalone shells, the old man replies, "You do not have to say anything more." So again, transitional phrase, for example, the situation there, when Mr. Abe learns about the narrator, and then of course the quote there at the very end, which this particular writer has decided was important for explaining their point. Now, some other tips for embedding quotes in your writing. First of all, you may switch the order of the elements, the TSQ, the transition, situation, and quote, but just be sure all three are present. Usually they're going to be in that order, TSQ, but not always. Feel free to mix it up and try out different ways of including your quotes. When paraphrasing, I know we're talking about quoting, but still, paraphrasing kind of goes along with it. You still want to use a transitional word and a situation. So get in the habit of using those two whenever you're quoting information or paraphrasing information. Do not refer to yourself, the task, or the quote. So don't say this quote shows us, or in this quote I will show, or in answer to the question, etc. This is basically like using training wheels in your writing, and we want to move past the training wheels. So these might kind of help you generate some ideas of what to say, but don't keep them in your final draft. Be sure that you take out all of this kind of language that refers to yourself, the task, or the quote. So let's practice. Anytime during this video, of course, feel free to pause and take out some scratch paper and practice, or rewind and watch a few things again, but let's look at an example. First of all, let's imagine that you're writing about the Three Little Pigs, the fairy tale. If you don't know it, go ahead and pause here and look it up very quickly so you'll kind of know what we're referring to. You decide that you want to quote the wolf in your essay. Maybe you're doing a character analysis on the wolf. This would be the wrong way to do it if you just come out and say, "The wolf is a very one-track minded individual, and I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." You can see that the quote is just stuck in there all by itself. It's not embedded into a sentence of any kind. There's no transition. There's no situation. So instead, go ahead and include a transition and a context for the quote. Feel free to pause here and practice and write this down, but correct the example that we just looked at. The wolf is a very one-track minded individual, and I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. Okay, here's one possibility of what you could have said. You could have said the wolf is a very one-track minded individual. We're doing our character analysis there. For example, that's our transitional phrase. When the wolf approaches the second pig, he says again, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. So again, it shows the one-track mindedness of the wolf, so it was a good choice of quote. We're giving the context. He's doing it again as he approaches the second pig. So we have our TSQ, and the quote is much better this second time around. So, in conclusion, why do it this way? Why bother to go through all the trouble to include a transition and situation with your quote? First of all, your writing will sound so much better than it originally did. A lot less choppy, it'll flow much better, and it'll be much clearer what you're trying to say. Second of all, your writing scores will instantly rise. Again, you're going to sound better. It's going to be more clear what you're talking about. Your analysis will be sharper. And of course, you'll be able to impress your friends with your amazing grades and your wonderful writing and your ability to communicate. And most importantly, it could possibly give you better performance in your English class, which might even make you less stressed and bring you inner peace.